Podcast presents It Chapter 2. Hey guys, welcome back to the Blood and Black Rum Podcast. I'm Ryan from coldsploitation.com, and I'm joined by my co-host Martin.
How's it going?
And we're back. We said that we're going to have a jam-packed schedule for the September and October months, and we definitely do. So we're doing every week for the rest of September and October, which we normally do for Halloween season. And of course, we wanted to get in the movie that we have on the show today because we did the last one. We did the first part of it. And obviously it's a good lead-in to the Halloween season. Of course, we're talking about It Chapter 2, which is in theaters now. And luckily, our theater was kind enough to not break down on us to let us go see this one. If you remember when we tried to do the Child's Play remake, we weren't able to go to the theater because the projector broke down. This time we were actually able to get there, and I had bad dreams about like maybe they're gonna break down and the whole theater will go up in flames or something like that.
That'd almost be a blessing.
Outdo the last time. Actually, that
would be a blessing because then we would have to go drive out to Albany.
Yeah. The one thing that I did notice though about It Chapter 2's theater was that they did put it in the best theater in the house. It had the best sound system that I think our theater can take.
I don't even remember.
To the point where I think Peebles fell down because of the bass rumbling. The store in the mall that it's in.
Mall.
Yeah. The strip mall that it's in. So
Peebles. That's
going out of business.
I was going to say, people still have Peebles?
It's being overtaken by whatever company owns Peebles because they think that the company name or something is going to be better. So, did you know that?
No.
Peebles is closing, but the company that owns Peebles will reopen a new store there that will be like Peebles, but a different store name than Peebles. I don't understand it. If Peebles isn't doing well, do you think that the other store with a different name will do well?
Like school shopping in ninth grade.
This has now become the Neiman Marcus podcast. Yeah.
Talk about all the latest fashion trends.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been in that. I haven't been in that theater one in ages because usually we get the back corner theater, even if we do see a film.
Yeah, normally
on opening weekend. It's still
they rolled out the red carpet. Here you go, It Chapter 2. Everybody's coming to see it. And to be honest with you, the theater was a little bit busier on a Sunday night than it normally is.
Monday night.
Actually, yeah, you're right. Monday night. Got my days wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know where I am anymore. I was in Boston for the weekend, and I had Monday off, so I really have no idea what's going on. But yeah, It Chapter 2, we wanted to do that. Obviously, we did It Chapter 1 last time. And if you remember correctly, back literally 2 years ago, we did enjoy It Chapter 1. We thought it was pretty good. For one thing, it does follow the book for the most part. And then it also has a good cast of kid characters that do a good job of the writing that they were given from Andy Muschietti's script and direction. And I don't honestly, it's been so long. I don't recall specifically what we said, and I obviously did not go back and listen to our episode. But do you remember exactly what we had said about the first one?
I liked it.
I think
we both liked it quite a bit.
That's the rendition. And if I look back at my rating on Letterboxd, I did give it 4 stars, so I imagine I gave it something and sometimes my ratings on the podcast don't actually match my rating, my star rating that I give things, but I would assume I gave it an 8.5 or something like that.
I think we're both 8.5.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and I think there were a couple issues that we had with it, but for the most part, we were really down with it, and thought it was a good... it had a good mix. It has a good mix of comedy. It has a good mix of scares. And it was a tense thing. And I think they did a good job with Pennywise. So we were pretty happy with the first part of It Chapter 1. So obviously we want to take a look at It Chapter 2 and see what they did, and just finish out the 6 hours of movie that we ended up getting from this. Because if you haven't noticed already, or if you haven't been to see the film, and if you haven't been to see the film, probably shouldn't listen to the rest of this episode. But it's 3 hours long almost. It's like 2 hours and 50 minutes, which by the time you round up with previews and stuff like that, it's basically a 3-hour movie that you're sitting in the theater for. So now that means that throughout this like summer, we've been at the theater for at least 6 hours watching Avengers and It Chapter 2. It's probably the longest I've spent in that theater in a while.
Forgot Spider-Man. That was like 2 hours long.
Two something, yeah. So we spend a lot of time at the theater. But It Chapter 2, yeah, so 3 hours for that film alone. And then the other film was about 2.5, I think, right? Yeah. So we're clocking 5.5 hours for the full double feature. And at that point, basically, that's a miniseries. That's like TV miniseries level of timeline. And I can't remember if the TV miniseries is, I think it's 8 hours, right?
I don't remember.
Or is it 6? I can't remember now. I think it was 3 parts.
No, it was 2 parts.
2 parts?
Yes.
They did 2 parts of 3 hours?
I believe so.
Really? Interesting. Surprised they were able to get people to sit that long during a session.
That was back then.
You didn't have anything else to do.
There was only 3 channels.
You're like, what are you going to watch tonight?
I'm going to have to watch it.
That's the only thing on.
It's got Tim Curry. Oh, national treasure. He's not American. Still a national treasure, though.
I loved him in Home Improvement.
I loved him in...
I'm just joking.
As I said, I loved him in Wild Thornberry.
That was me poking fun at the home TV watching crowd, thinking that Tim Curry was Tim Allen. Wow. It was a really in-depth joke, so if you didn't get it, it's okay.
Well, why would you joke about that? Home Improvement's like the show of the 90s.
I threw out a Jonathan Taylor Thomas reference yesterday. I don't know why. Didn't even really make much sense, but I just did it. There's a woman that works in my office, and her initials are JT, and I said, "This says JT on it," and I was like, "Jonathan Taylor Thomas." Don't know where it came from. Maybe it's the fact that my dad reminds me of Tim Allen without the cocaine binge. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor Thomas reference. Where is that guy? Not in It Chapter 2. We're way off base here. Sorry. Getting back to the film in hand here. Way off topic here. So It Chapter 2, 3 hours long. Now, this is one that it forgoes the normal switching back and forth of, adults and kids that Stephen King's It did in the actual 1,000-something page novel. Where you would kind of jump back and forth in time. You'd have parts where it'd be all kids, then you'd have parts where it'd be adults, and you'd kind of flip back and forth. And that's the same way that the miniseries worked. Flip back and forth between the two. Now, the It of the 2010s is mostly situated in one decade and then the other. So you have the kids in the first film and the adults in the second film. And so this time around, we get slight snippets of flashbacks here and there, mostly to cue you in and say, hey, remember when this happened in the first film? Because it has some bearing on this one. So it's almost like previously on It Chapter 2. That it works in that way. But for the most part, this is mostly situated on the adults. And we got a good cast here. We got Jessica Chastain, or you called Jessica Chesty. You called her Jessica Chesty in theater. And it's true. I mean, they do focus on the memories in this film quite a bit. They make sure that she's wearing a little low-cut shirt and she's running a lot, and sometimes in white, so that she can get all bloody. You've got James McAvoy, who has done some pretty good things lately.
Mullet seems to be making a comeback.
Mullet? Is that what you said? Yeah. Well,
between him and Jay Ryan, they both, competing for slick back, nice greased,
Yep. And even then, I mean, they don't have the mullet capabilities of the guy in here that's like the antagonist character. That was the bully in the first film.
Bowers.
Yeah, Bowers. He has a ridiculous mullet in this one. It's pretty awesome. It's like
he had one as a youth too.
Yeah. That one is a really great mullet. But James McAvoy's is like a cross between like a guy who's slightly balding who wants a mullet. That's what he's got.
He's holding on, so he's got, you know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because he's got like a slight hairline, but then the party's going on in the back for sure.
That's where I'm headed. That's where I'm heading with my hair.
You know, and I honestly, like, with his hair, I didn't really recognize him as much because, did you see Split?
No.
Well, he's in Split, and he plays the split personality character of M. Night Shyamalan's film, and he's bald in that one. He's got a shaved head, and I really didn't recognize him from that one to this one with all that hair. So, kudos to James McAvoy being able to play those different parts with his hair. You got Bill Hader in here as Richie Tozier.
I was going to say, well, you know what? He's no Tilda Swinton.
That's true. Tilda's all over the place.
Plays, you know. I think her next project, she's going to do, it's one person show. She's doing the whole Wizard of Oz by herself. Every role.
What about the Flying Monkeys?
Hey, everyone. CGI her face on everyone.
So you got so James McAvoy plays Bill, who's the in Stephen King's novel, the main character, the main youngster and then adult in that book. I wouldn't say that he's the main character in this one.
He was the main character in the first film.
He was the main character in the first film. And this movie sort of flops all over the place between the different characters in it. So there's really not one main person, but they kind of switch back and forth over time. Although you could say that actually not Ben, I'm sorry. There's so many names. Mike is like the ringleader who brings everybody back together. So I don't know. Maybe you'd say he's the main character of this one. But so you got James McAvoy. Bill Hader shows up as Richie Tozier, and if you've seen any pictures of Bill Hader from this film, you know that he looks a lot like Finn Wolfhard. They did a really good transition from Finn Wolfhard as young Richie to Bill Hader as older Richie with that sort of like ring lock type hair. So I did like that. And Bill Hader obviously brings a lot of comedy to the film. Probably one of the most prominent actors in this film in terms of how much he stands out from the rest. You've got
definitely the biggest name of the film.
Yeah, I would say like a big name. James McAvoy and Jessica Chastain are pretty big names too, but I would say Bill Hader is one that like just stands out. Just, you know. Oh, I forgot to say it. I wanted to thank our house band tonight, the Blue Jean Committee, for showing up and playing Catalina Breeze. So, thanks for that. Can't wait for that to get taken down for copyright infringement. You got Isaiah Mustafa, who I don't know. Don't know any of his work. I'm not even going to click the IMDb link because I don't care to look it up.
You don't want to fall down that rabbit hole.
Jay Ryan is your, you said your slick back hair, Ben Hanscom.
That fucking goatee is awful. No one at that board meeting when, they're talking about building some skyrise in Nebraska or whatever the fuck and, like, coordinating it off. He's sitting there on his Skype call with, the fanciest bourbon he can find. No one's like, listen, Ben, that goatee, it's not 1994. It's got to go. You're not trying out for Clerks. You're not Dante. It's got to go.
It's kind of funny with the goatee, too, because...
not even connected.
Well, when you see that, you're thinking, like, this guy's the villain. Screw Pennywise. This guy's like he's a smarmy asshole that's going to be the henchman.
Well, the thing is, they're all smart. Well, outside of Jessica Chastain, when we see them as adults, they're, her and Ben are the only kind of grounded ones. The rest of them kind of grew up to be assholes.
That's true.
Oh, I'm a famous writer, but I got shitty endings, and Peter Bogdanovich is telling me my endings suck. That was Peter Bogdanovich.
Gotcha.
Very distinct king,
James Ransone is Eddie. He's grown up to be
a fucking risk assessment, for insurance. That's just, screams like, oh, fuck you.
Yeah, what's he driving? He's driving like a Lincoln
Cadillac.
Yeah.
That thing, gets in that accident, I have a scratch on it.
Yeah, but the other car bounces off of it. Fucking totaled, but his, nothing.
He's fine.
Yeah.
That was an ad for Cadillac. Cadillac, some asshole can hit you when you're not paying attention. You'll be safe. It's fucking got, better than American tanks.
That's right. But so, one thing that stood out to me about the amount of characters that we have. So we have, like, what? We have 6 people? Six, not counting Stanley, because he offs himself. part of this book and part of the miniseries as well. Stanley kills himself. He doesn't want to participate in coming back to Derry to finish off it.
Well,
like they had.
Would you want to go back to that?
I wouldn't want to.
Shithole town.
No. But so, not counting Stanley, there are six people, and 5 of them are insanely successful.
They all just managed to.
Which is 5 more people than are successful in our group of friends. So it does astound that, like, literally everyone in this group of people that grew up in shithole Derry with pretty much nothing in it have now become, like, the most successful people that are around. Like, Bill Hader's character, Richie, is driving some sort of...
Mustang.
Mustang.
He's a comedian, stand-up comedian.
Apparently consistently having stage fright, despite the fact that he's a really successful
No, he doesn't
comedian.
have stage fright. It's because he's having the the memories of Derry. So
I guess.
That's why.
I guess.
That's what spooks him into choking on the stage. As we said, Bill is our Stephen King stand-in who writes...
Oh, yeah, he's totally a Stephen King stand-in.
Writes crappy novels.
I mean, not only is he a Stephen King stand-in just because people tend to criticize Stephen King's endings.
Well, I didn't even know that was really a thing.
It is, yeah.
Because I don't read his books, and I figured with how many people just absolutely love his books, and they constantly been made, like every fucking one's been made over 3,000 times into a film.
The real in-joke is the ending of It. Because a lot of people have found its ending to be really off-putting in that it's sort of like you have like a sort of an ancient world turtle beast thing. That's what it is. So a lot of people did not like the ending of it as in book form. And so the real treat that we get as viewers is to see James McAvoy as a writer who apparently ends his stories with very like downbeat endings,
and they all died.
Yeah,
the end.
And he meets with Stephen King, who is an antique shop person who apparently might be running something like Needful Things, which is another Stephen King novel about an antique shop, and they meet up together. So that's a little Easter egg for people there.
It's not even a little one.
It's not even a little one. Honestly,
it's right.
It's kind of sad because like this is more of like it's almost like the same thing as a Stan Lee cameo now, because Stephen King is looking kind of old, and
because he is old.
I mean, he is old, but it's saddening like to see that.
Why wasn't he in Pet Sematary?
He is in Pet Sematary. Oh, you mean the new one? Yeah. The new one. Yeah,
the good one. John Lithgow.
The good one.
Is that why? Because they're like, oh,
yeah, he wasn't, right?
No, he wasn't.
He wasn't.
I was saying, is it because they hit their quota on old people? Like, whoa. Go, John Lithgow.
I was going to say, because he is in the original Pet Sematary. He's not in the new one, but yeah.
Every movie he's in, he should just be in it and just be yelling, "It's meteor shit!" From like Creep
Show. Yeah. Creep Show. I see what you did there.
But yeah, no. No, you're right. He is looking rugged, but wouldn't you be rugged too if you were pumping out like 3 books a year?
It's true. The publishers are cracking that whip on him.
You think he's got a ghostwriter?
No, actually, I don't think he has a ghostwriter. I don't think he has a ghostwriter because he keeps revisiting the same old shit all the time. That's why I don't think he has a ghostwriter.
I just want to know who, and I know we're getting a little off the beaten path here, but I just want to know who's the idiot editor and publisher who's like, you know what? We are going to print 1,000+ page book instead of like, let's divide it up into volumes.
Oh, you mean like when it first released?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, well, you know what? Actually, I don't think it was, but The Stand was abridged at one point. And then it was released in its long form, like 1,200 pages. So, at sometimes I think they did question, like, are people going to read all of this? But I think that at the time, and I think it was released in 1989, if I remember correctly. I think at that point they were like, you know what, Stephen King sells books. Stephen King can do what he wants. So they released it.
I know, but if he sells books, wouldn't you think the publisher would be like, we got to cut it down?
Well, you know what? They did end up doing that for the Green Mile.
I was going to say, so we can make fucking money.
The Green Mile was released in like 6 parts, like a 6 small, slight novella parts to it. So, yeah, they did end up doing that. They're like, you know what? This is a great way for us to split these all up.
Just milk that cow.
Yeah. So they did end up doing that, yeah. Yeah, we're way off topic. I don't even know what we were talking about. No, I do.
The end. Podcast over.
And that's it. All right, so we said James Ransone. So all of the 6 characters, they're very, very, there's a lot to the characters themselves. And we learned a lot about them in the first film. The one thing there's a few things that we don't learn about them that much, though. And the biggest one is about Bill Hader's character, Richie. Richie is the character that gets the most dynamic development in It Chapter 2, and there's sort of an agenda there, but the agenda is, I would say that the characterization of Richie and where they're going with it is sort of hidden until the very end, when they actually reveal this element to Richie that has, that we haven't really seen.
I don't think it's as hidden as you think because of the opening.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I'll say about that is that the opening is in the book.
No, but I mean, with that opening where the gay couple, which I didn't even know they were kids. They didn't really look like they were kids. They looked like they were like 24.
Wait, hold up. They're supposed to be kids?
I think like teenagers. Yeah.
I don't think so.
Well, why would Pennywise be
30 years old at least?
Well, why would Pennywise be going after them?
Easy prey.
But he goes after children.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the idea, I don't think they were really supposed to be kids, but I would say that the idea behind that is just that they were easier prey because they're, yeah, I got nothing. I don't know why exactly, but yeah, that we don't normally see Pennywise go after somebody that is more of an adult.
Anywho, with that opening of the little ruffians beating the hell out of the two because they're gay and using, homophobic slurs against them because they're gay, it's kind of like, oh, someone's probably going to be gay, and you're going to find out, been hiding this my entire life.
So,
because otherwise there would be kind of no point. It may have been in the book, but that, there wouldn't have been a point, really, because they don't really, in either film, explore, because I know in the book, as you brought up, with the first one, because we talked about how with Mike in the first one, he's targeted because he's black.
Yep. A lot of racism.
Yeah, so, but not so much in the movie itself. Mm-hmm. It's very strongly hinted at, but they're not going super overt. This is super overt,
right?
So even if it was in the book, if it was just thrown in the beginning, then it'd be like, well, why would you be throwing that in there? What's the message that you're trying to send? Because that would be the one and only scene where that's the thing. So somebody's got to find out, they're hiding in the closet because of growing up in Derry and everyone's a shitbag asshole.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think that one of the things that the 2 films, It and It Chapter 2, they don't really do that well, is navigate the actual bigotry that goes on in Derry, because yes, we do see a few scenes where that occurs, but for the most part, Derry as a city, especially in It Chapter 2, is like
barren.
Yeah, it's empty.
It's like a ghost town.
There's like no one there. And so you don't get the scope of the bigotry that you're supposed to get from Derry.
And we get that in the first, like I said, you definitely get that more in the first one because they're all children going around the town and, they're running into people, etc. Yeah. Here, after outside that car, is everyone just at the carnival or something?
Yeah.
Which that's a trope. That's a trope now that's been popping up in every fucking film. Gotta have a winter fun fair, It's like a Japanese anime slice of life episode. Gotta have the carnival episode where they all go to the festival.
Yeah, it's funny because Stranger Things did the same thing. They have the July 4th carnival, and you've got the holdover from Finn Wolfhard and stuff like that. Yeah,
you had Shazam. They had that fight scene there, and then in Spider-Man, you had the same thing down.
It's a big. They filmed it all at the same location. You're like, we're gonna have 6 films come in here and just have production crews on for each one.
Well, if you ever watch the end credits, they're all getting filmed in New Zealand or Toronto. It's like, hey, get that, discount
Georgia.
Money. Yeah. So they probably are. Like, yeah, we're all going to go to Toronto. We're all going to shoot at that one boardwalk and
the carnival that's going on there.
And call it a day.
Yep. Yeah, I do think that they could have done a better job of, especially in It Chapter 2, of making it, giving a little bit more perspective on Derry. Because Derry, as a whole, seems very empty in this movie. It seems like they had no extras. They had nobody to, like, put in any other exterior scenes. And there's an entire, like, carnival going on, and there's a parade going on. And you just really don't get the sense that Derry is a blossoming community or anything like that. And you don't have any of that development. So the first scene does really seem like a weird...
it's a good opening.
Oh,
but they don't go anywhere with it.
Yeah.
Because again, if you go off the whole, like, it feeds off of fear and, like, anger, you could use that, as, like, oh, that's why everyone in Derry's, racist, homophobic, asshole. As
it stands, that opening scene, while very good, almost plays out exploitatively because they don't ever come back to it. They don't have a callback to it at all. No one ever says anything like, someone murdered, those people. It literally is.
Well, I was saying, nobody cares in the town because obviously those kids just feel like they're free to fucking huck some asshole.
Yeah,
after bludgeon. Which, by the way, after the ass whooping they gave that guy, very surprised at how his face was beaten to a pulp, able to breathe and, like, be conscious.
That always happens in movies.
Floating down the river. No, he should have just been, washed up aside and, like, Pennywise, like, look what I found.
Yeah. No one's skull ever bounces off. Their brain doesn't ever bounce off their skull like in normal life or anything like that. They just are, a little bit bloodied.
Well, I think there is a movie that, shows that, but...
Yeah.
American history.
Yeah, I would say that the opening scene, while very good, and I think it was played effectively during the scene itself, I just think that without calling back to it throughout the film, like, it just seems like a weird inclusion in this movie until you get to that part about Richie, because that's the only connection besides Pennywise. That's the only connection to the entire element of them being bullied and things like that. You never see him again. And the other thing about that scene that I do like is that normally you wouldn't expect somebody to be, just destroyed in this fight and then thrown into the water and then, then also killed by Pennywise. Like, that's a really terrible fate for that guy. And you wouldn't normally expect that. So it's a very dark and foreboding opening to the film that sort of seems at odds with the rest of the film, because a lot of the film is very comedy based, and you don't get a lot of the darker, tense scenes that were in the first film.
It's a lot more comedic than the first one.
Yeah, they definitely play up the whole aspect of Richie being a jokester and playing off of Eddie, who is also James Ransone does a really good job, just like Bill Hader does with the comedy elements. I think they both do a really good job playing off of each other, but that comedy is sort of at odds with the rest of the film and its own counterpart, It Chapter 1. It seems like they leaned a little too far into the comedy, and sometimes that comedy is unintentional.
Well, I think it's because Bill Hader said, I'm getting paid by the joke. So, we're going to have a lot of fucking jokes.
I'm going to throw them in there. Yeah.
And just sprinkle. Bill, that's not in the script. Don't care. Getting paid by the joke. Need that money, not an SNL anymore. Gotta get that money.
I mean, I get it. Like, realism, you'd probably want to be joking because otherwise you'd be terrified of Pennywise. But I think that the comedy just kind of clouds the rest of the scares.
And at the same time, too, it's very hit or miss. Because it's so rapid fire, not everything's a winner.
Mm-hmm.
So you do get, like, some funny lines, and then some other ones you're just kind of like, eh.
I'll tell you one scene that stuck out to me as being a really, really odd inclusion in this movie is when Eddie is being confronted by the leper in the pharmacy.
That's just, I don't know what happened. I don't know, because I was watching, like I said, before I came over to do this, I was watching Half in the Bags review of this, and they were talking about that, and they were saying, like, was it like were they realizing as they were editing the scene that it's not scary, so they're trying to make it fun because it's such a blip on the radar. Like it's
a really weird scene that just crops out of nowhere. It almost plays out like a commercial for CVS. Like get your flu shot or this will happen. And then because the whole element of having Angel of the Morning play for literally like 2 seconds. Just 2 seconds.
It's so
and never return again.
It's so out of place because the rest of you have like foreboding music and like what's going on and then like you have this like little Evil Dead 2 moment where it's Deadite like throwing up on you with the music playing and then it just goes back to it's totally jarring. Like it would have been fun. Like if they had like the song playing like I said when I was watching Half in the Bag and they were talking about it. They were saying if they had like that song playing throughout, it'd make more sense and it might be like ha funny. But the fact that it's just there, it's like this one little thing. It's so like what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I just didn't understand it. It seemed so out of place. And that callback to like using music as a comedic moment never returns again. So it seemed like a really weird pick for that one scene in particular to have that moment because it's just never returns. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Either play it up as a comic moment and maybe play that song for an extended period of time, or just don't play it at all and just let it go as its own, scare moment because none of the other scares play up sort of the comedy of it, or not intentionally at least. So this one in particular was just really weird. And even that scene, it almost felt like somebody else directed it. Like Andy Muschietti didn't direct this particular part of this scene.
Second unit was out there. And like,
second unit was there and they were like, you know what, we're going to do this. And then there was also that scene when he leaves the pharmacy where he's like, oh, it opens from, I think it like push, not pull or something like that, right? When he's trying to get out of the pharmacy and he's like, oh, thank you. Like that whole scene was just super awkward. It just didn't work very well.
The tying to that, I think, is the fact that a lot of these like scenes like that totally unnecessary. Did we, especially for the fact that this is a fucking 3-hour film and it's a 3-hour film that has no story essentially. Everything's just wandering and meandering. It's a 3-hour film because we have to watch every character go 15 minutes on there. We're going to look for an artifact.
Yeah.
And then we have their, scare sequence, which is literally almost verbatim from the first film. And then they have a flashback to something that happened to them that we didn't see in the first film because they weren't together at that moment. And the scares that happen are literally stuff that we've basically kind of seen from the first film. So it's all just totally redundant. Yeah. And it makes for a very, boring and slog, to get through.
I would say it's worse because okay, we got 6 characters. So when they first start to do that, looking for the artifact, you're like, okay, well, maybe they'll, they'll do a quick one. And then you watch and you see, they already did 2 artifacts with jump scares and one it's a big scene for this character to find their artifact. So you're like, shit, I've got to sit through 6 of these.
And as I saw online too, this is the horror film of Avengers: Infinity War.
Yeah, basically.
It is 3 hours and you have to watch every fucking character go on their little mini journey. And that's why, kind of getting back to how we were talking about, Stephen King not knowing how to fucking trim something down and talking about it being a miniseries, this would have worked so much better as just a fucking Netflix series.
You could have definitely devoted an episode to each character.
Yeah.
That is much better suited to a TV show because you have a chance to kind of take a step back and say, okay, I watched that episode. I'm going to take a break and I'll come back to it.
Or you can just plow through it.
Yeah, or you can plow through it. But having to sit through it in a movie in 3 hours where you're thinking oh man, I saw 2 of these and now I've got to wait another 45 minutes for anything else to happen besides them finding their artifact. That's a little bit of it's a slog to get through. And I think that, that's an issue with this film, is that it should not feel like you have a chore ahead of you. You should not feel like you have to just get through this moment to get to the next one. I think that they should have cut out, or at least really cut down on the scares, because some of them during the artifact scenes are just way too long. There's chase sequences, there are build-ups, and it's just way too long to get to the point where you're just like, okay, they found their artifact.
Well, not only that, a lot of the scares, too, rely on... This whole film, compared to the first one, is nothing but jump scares.
Yeah.
So, like, from a horror element, it's not even tense. Like, everything that happens that's kind of tense is everything that happens in the background of, like, something that's about to happen. So, like, when Bev's having her little artifact hunt at her old apartment, when, you see the old lady in the background kind of, like, skulking about and all of that, that's, like, tense. But when then you actually get to see the good old CGI old lady saggy boobies and running around, that's not, that's...
Honestly, I even thought the whole Bev sequence with seeing the lady do some breakdancing in the background was super comical. Like, I didn't think it was scary at all. It was just funny. Because it was not played out very well. And I've seen some films that have older women characters who are like a stand-in for being scared of like patients with Alzheimer's or things like that. Real life things that actually work, like The Taking of Deborah Logan. That's a scary film. That has an older lady who is actually scary. And this one, I would say that like they didn't do a good job of setting up that old lady to do some
she's not. But like I
Japanese
said,
style ghost movements.
Yeah, no, you're right. She's not. But I think like the interesting stuff's the stuff that happens in the background. That you can see like when they're focusing on Bev, and you can just see vaguely in the background like her kind of skulking about, or like when time stops for Richie, you see in the background everyone stopped and paused. And then it's ruined by Pennywise come floating down. Oh, Richie's got a secret! Richie's got a secret!
Or a giant Paul Bunyan slamming his axe down.
Yeah, or just like, oh, here's this, these fucking, like, these cookies start, Chinese cookies. Fortune cookies just start like, oh, they're like little spider things now. Ooh!
That's straight out of the book. But I just think it doesn't translate well. Like, because the film relies so much on heavy CGI.
And in this one, I think it looks a lot worse than the first one.
I would have...
Like, their budget got totally squandered.
I'll give you an example, because we sound very harsh on this movie. But I'll give you an example where I think that the tension did work in It Chapter 2. The scene where Pennywise meets the girl underneath the bleachers. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of, like, being manipulative of her because she has a birthmark on her face. So he's saying, "Oh, I didn't want to come out in the light because I'm also, ugly. So I really didn't want you to make fun of me." And he lures her through the bleachers to him and then chomps her face off. I thought that was a pretty good moment because it doesn't really rely too much on CGI. You're relying on a realistic situation, and obviously this realistic situation is built on the reality of kids trusting strangers because they offer them something. So that's Pennywise's MO, really.
I know, you're right. That's a tense scene. I just don't like that in this film he's running around fucking just gobble, 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 gobble.
Yeah, chomping down people.
I mean, I think that tenseness of that scene's kind of ruined by him. Like, ooh, but eat you.
Yeah.
It'd be more mischievous, for him to dispose of her in a different way.
Yeah,
because we don't see that in the first one. You don't see Georgie getting eaten by him or anything like that.
Yeah, he pulls him down obviously into the sewers, which is his
lair.
Lair, yeah.
But the whole like in this one we actually see him. And the same thing with the gay kid that gets washed down the river. We get to see him eat him and the little boy in the fun house. It's all like just.
It's a little much.
Contrived.
Yeah. I think they wanted to show a little bit too much in this one. They wanted the gore with the tension, and it just doesn't work as much. I think if they left that like that, and they had him snatch her or something like that, it would have been a little bit more effective. Because you only see the disappearance. You don't see the aftermath. So I thought that was a good tense scene, something that they should have done more within the film, rather than rely on CGI and very action-based effects to have this like suspenseful moments, and I just think it's not super scary. It's not, and I say that, but a horror movie doesn't need to be scary. But when it's 3 hours long and it relies on jump scares, it better be fucking scary.
Or have a
good plot, yeah.
Like I said, which, again, this is a 3-hour movie where there is no plot. It's just stuff.
And,
it's the first film, but they're all adults now.
And they're trying to remember. That's literally it, really.
And Mike's the only one that can remember because he stayed in Derry. He never left.
The other thing that really irked me about this movie is that they sort of fashion a new reason, or they make an artifact for Richie. There wasn't really in the novel. Like, first of all, Richie's not really the character that's gay in the novel. But the other thing is they make this arcade moment for Richie. The moment where he is in an arcade and he's playing with his friend on the arcade machine, and Street Fighter, by the way. And then his friend sort of turns on him once he sees Bowers and sort of like, makes up a scenario, and it really affected him throughout his life. So his artifact is just a arcade token. But
my biggest gripe with that scene is the film that all takes place in 1989, and somehow they got a Mortal Kombat arcade machine, and that didn't come out until 92. So
yeah,
that's my biggest gripe.
But that doesn't really ever happen in the novel. And in the novel, the more important scenario that happened to Richie was that he went to a showing at the theater. And obviously this was in the 1950s because they kind of swapped the time periods a little bit for this movie. But he went to the theater to see a werewolf movie. And a werewolf actually comes to life in the theater from it. And that becomes the reasoning why they are able to vanquish it, because he realizes, like, what can kill a werewolf can also... It's my belief of what can kill a werewolf that can kill it as well. I can kill him by my belief. And so that is like an important moment in the novel that doesn't ever really show up in the movies. It's not in the first movie. It's not in this one.
It does. Not the whole... But the belief does, because you have Eddie, right? The hypochondriac.
Right.
He's the one, because Bev tells him with the old fence post, like, this has the power, to kill monsters. And he's like, really? And she's like, yeah, if you believe hard enough. Which is also something that kind of sucks about this film, too, is the fact that the whole end fight scenario, it's the same goddamn thing from the first one.
Yeah,
they just have to realize, we just have to believe hard enough that it has no power over us.
I really did not like the ending, because I felt like that was super contrived, and what I actually wanted from the ending was something more akin to the things that Bill had been talking about in his writing throughout the rest of the film. I was expecting the film to actually go a little bit darker than it does, because Bill throughout most of the film is talking about his endings, and he said they're everybody says they're very bleak. That he has a worldview that is not all happy endings, that sometimes endings end poorly. And I thought that they were going to go in that direction for it, where something would happen at the end where they figure out, oh yeah, there is really no way to get rid of it. Like, it is here to stay, happens every 27 years, and there's not much that you can do about it. So even though they made a pact and they came back, like, I wanted to see at the end that, like, it was going to come back no matter what. No matter what they did, getting rid of the deadlights and whatever, it still comes back. And that it doesn't go in that direction, I think, is sort of a failure of the film, because it just seems like it's just such a perfect ending that they can just will this thing away and it just goes away. And that's it. Like, no problems. Just, it doesn't exist. We think it doesn't exist. We are not fearing it anymore, so it doesn't exist.
I think, too, it's supposed to add to, like, the whole, like, overarching story of, like, this is what being an adult's about. Accepting things out of your control and not letting them get to you and just fucking dealing with it.
Right. Just
Which makes for a not so great who gives a shit, point.
Yeah, I wish it went a little darker. I mean, yeah, obviously we lose Eddie, spoiler alert. But I just think that, like, the end of the film, and obviously, you know, it sort of matches the novel. I think the end of the film is just a little too neat. It just, you know, it ends in much the same way as the kids' version, and there's not that much here that, you know, has stakes to it. Once they beat it, that's it. Gone for 27, or gone forever, rather than 27 years. And it's an ancient evil that has been around for millennia. Just seems too neat to me.
Well, not only that, I mean, the stakes in it don't really feel that high because compared to the first one where the child actors make, you know, their fear feel very believable. Here, it's just, you know, and the fact that most of the scares in this film are nothing but jump scares. The stakes, the lack of tension makes it, you know, hard to feel like these characters are ever in any real danger.
Well, one thing I think that makes it feel like that too is that Pennywise is always like there and one step ahead of them, and yet never does anything to them. Like, I mean, obviously he tries to scare them, but the actual threat of Pennywise doing something to them when he could obviously do something to them is just not there. I think that's one of the major missteps. And you said, you know, you talked about the lack of tension in this movie, but I think that's part of it. Is that we know, like, Pennywise isn't going to do anything to anybody until the end of the film. There's no real setup that would make us think, like, okay, something big is going to happen. It's kind of like The Walking Dead, where you know, like,
Rick's just going to ride in.
Right, like, you know, like, all of your main characters are fine, at least until the season finale. And then there might be something there that's...
the season opener.
Right. It's sort of like that, where you know, and it plays out exactly that way in It, Chapter 2, you know, where everybody is fine until the very end.
And that's a perfect way to describe it, too, because it's like a Walking Dead story episode. Like, Carol gets lost, meets up with somebody, has a change of heart. The other people she meets doesn't. They end up to a terrible fate. She goes back to the way she was. And that's how, like, the artifact hunt is. Like, when they're all doing it, it's like, oh, I should be thinking of, oh, I'm having memories. Oh, I'm scared. Oh, Pennywise. Oh, now we're back to the hotel.
Yeah, I mean, it just... I just... a lot of times, I just felt kind of exhausted by the film. That it was just... It kept on going. The ending feels extremely long. It feels like it goes on forever. And it's one of those films that suffers from the extended chase sequence. You know, those chase sequences that are meant to be suspenseful and yet play out for way longer than they need to. And that's exactly what happens with It Chapter 2. You have an entire... I think like the entire 50 minutes at the end of the film are devoted to going into Pennywise's lair almost.
And that's nowhere near as fun and interesting as the first time.
That's way too long because it's almost like a video game except you're not playing it. It's like, okay, all right, we got rid of Pennywise. Oh wait, he's coming back.
It's like another boss form.
Yeah. He's like, all right, so Pennywise the clown is gone. Half clown, half spider is back. And then, you know, you have multiple phases and it's just I think it's exhausting.
Now, my question for you is because we see a picture of this nice smiling Swedish man from the carnival. So why is Pennywise linked to him? Did he kill him and take oh, he's a creepy looking fucker. I'm gonna look like him from now on.
I guess the film doesn't really make that clear, and it also says that Pennywise has a daughter, and it's the daughter that is the woman that torments Bev when she goes to her house. I don't know that the film really ever...
It doesn't.
Yeah, it's kind of
just when Bev's in the house and she's talking about it, like, oh, there's a nice old-timey picture. Like, oh, that looks a lot like Bill Skarsgård. Oh, it is Bill.
Yeah, just kind of... I don't know if it's supposed to just give a reason for the form of Pennywise or what, but...
you know what? This one's been working good for 200 years instead of flying demon owls scaring the natives, you know.
Yeah, I just, you know... I don't really know the reasoning behind it. It just doesn't make that very clear.
Not sure if I'm a fan of the whole idea that it came from outer space. Especially when there's a lot of, like, Lovecraftian horror going on. Why not just have it be something from, like, another dimension?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because, again, like, when the whole, like, oh, don't look into the eyes and lights of, you know, the whole, like, jagged teeth other dimension, that's, like, very... And, like, tentacles and shit coming out, that's, like, Lovecraftian. As all hell.
What I wanted to see is something like, that it is actually... part of the universe's plan to like correct things, because we know that Derry is sort of a shitty place, or at least you're supposed to get that feeling that I don't think comes across very well in the movies, but in the book you know that Derry's a really shitty place, and so it could potentially be, if you wanted a very downbeat ending, the universe's way of correcting that by saying, you know what, this shitty place, we're going to put it here, and every 27 years sort of fixes things. You know, not in a nice way, but it fixes things. And that would be a really devastating ending, that you end on the note, and especially for a mainstream movie like It Chapter 2, where you have a lot of theater goers and people who don't really want to think about movies and they just want to watch it. That would be a really tough ending. Like, sort of like the Mist level of endings, where you're like, the universe is inherently evil. Or bad, or at least not uncaring. It's uncaring.
Well, that's a great ending.
Yeah, I think it is. That's the way I would have done it.
I know a lot of people don't like that ending, but I think it's a great ending.
The universe is uncaring. It does not care about you, and it is just trying to fix the status quo. And that's it. That's how you end it. And, you know, that's what it was. It's the universe's way of, you know, balancing things. And that's it. That would be a really downbeat ending, and I can see why they didn't go with it. Because
you could have done something like that too, and have like, because Mike stayed in Derry the entire time, like him bringing them back as like him bringing, like, you know, kind of being like a Sutter Kane like type character who like lures them in, and, you know, who's like, I fooled you, you know,
right?
You're all getting sacrificed, you know.
Like, people don't really like that idea. Like, people don't like to think about the universe as uncaring. They like to think about there's a God, and God is all seeing, and he has a plan, and, you know, just because bad things happen to you doesn't mean that they're going to happen forever and stuff like that. People don't like to think about the fact that, like, maybe the universe doesn't really care about you. And I feel like people just would not like that ending. And it's not something that happens much in movies in general. And I would say that most movies don't have a downbeat ending where, like, the all-out terrible thing happens. But I have to agree with Bill Denbrough. I mean, realistically, It Chapter 2 should not end on a very happy note, that everybody was able to just believe that it doesn't exist, or it's not scary, and it works, and it goes away forever. I would have much rather seen something like, this is just the universe at work, and you can't get rid of it, and 27 years down the road, it's going to come back again, so maybe just, you know, it's better to leave and forget.
Maybe if we stayed for the end credits, we would have heard, like, Pennywise laughing or something, like he's coming back. Because again, they killed him again with thinking he was small, but again, it's this literally the same thing they did in the first film, and it wasn't enough.
You know, that would be also interesting too if the film ended like they thought that they vanquished Pennywise because of that, and we know that throughout the It Chapter 2 they did not remember what they did because they were so far from the proximity of Derry that they started to forget everything that they did. So it would be kind of funny if they did that and they thought they won, and literally again they did not win. And it just keeps happening. It's like a cycle that just keeps happening. Again, that'd be another downbeat ending that I'd be down with, because that's very realistically terrible. I like it. I like those.
It's an evil greater than themselves.
I like those evil endings. It's great.
So you love the ending to Into the Mouth of Madness.
Yeah, I love that ending.
Everyone's just fucked.
There is not very many movies that are just, you know, they go hog wild with like, yeah, bad things happen, and this ending is that. This is a bad ending.
I was gonna say, you would have liked the alternate cut ending to Little Shop of Horrors then.
Everybody's eating?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like those
endings.
No
Rick Moranis for you. He's dead.
Yeah. I like those endings. I do. I think they're more realistic, at least because, think about it, Pennywise is ultimate evil that's been eating and killing people for millennia.
What I also don't understand, too, is apparently the Native Americans trapped him before or something in their little rice cooker thing.
I guess
that's all I can think of, too, is that little artifacts made me think of, like, or the original Dragon Ball, like, how did Master Roshi defeat Piccolo? Oh, they put him in a fucking rice cooker, you know?
Yeah, I didn't know what that was. I like
because they acted like it's been done before, like, you know, because that's how Mike was talking.
I guess that was like Mike's like fake out, like he just made them think that would work because he thought it would, but yeah, I don't know. Just
maybe it traps it, but it's like on a cycle. It only does it for like 500 years, and it gets released, you know, because the shamanism won't hold for that.
Yeah, here's the thing. I mean, smarter people than these 6 have attempted this before, and it didn't work.
How dare you? They're all very successful.
They are very successful, that's for sure. But
now you mean 7?
The odds
now knocked down to 5.
The odds are against them. Let's just say that the odds are against them.
What'd you think of the Thing homage in this?
I thought it was pretty good. I think they did a good job with actually doing, even though it's CGI and it's not the practical effects that the Thing has. I thought they did a good job with making it look very similar.
Is it even an homage, or is it just downright, you know, they homage it by
stealing
by beat? Because you even have Bill Hader saying, you know, you gotta be fucking kidding, you know. And the same exact, you know, silhouette shot from behind of the head and the legs popping out, you know.
I like to think of it as an homage. Although at the same time, you're kind of thinking like, as an homage, you would more expect a Stephen King thing. You wouldn't really expect a thing. So,
because after that, I remember what I said. I was like, oh, all you need now is Bill Hader running around with a fucking flamethrower, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a pretty good job. I don't know. Like, and then the other thing is that they do throw in homages to Stephen King's other works. Like, we get a Shining homage, which I did not like. It was very forced, but at least it's there. You have the, you know, you saw that, right? With the door opening and, you know, the Johnny's, you know, that whole homage is very forced and very shoved in there. Like, how do we get a Stephen King, you know,
homage? Not only that too, like, because it's like the face changes are very like bad CGI looking, so it's
right,
like, you know,
right.
Open up, here's Johnny, open up.
The better thing that I liked is having Stephen King play an antique shop's owner, because that's an homage that doesn't really call itself out. It does not like saying, this is Needful Things. But at the same time, people who know it are like, Needful Things. You know? So, I don't know. I mean, I thought that the Shining reference was really forced. The Thing reference was there, but...
I was saying it's great, too, because I just love the fact that Stephen King doesn't like The Shining. The film,
yeah. Stanley Kubrick's film, yeah.
Just love that.
But I mean, I thought it was all right. I didn't mind it.
Were there any others? I didn't see like anything else, like Christine or, you know.
Not that I can recall, really. Yeah, I mean, most of the other things, not so much, but just The Thing and the Shining reference.
What I don't get is the Nightmare on Elm Street reference when the theater had that Richie goes into to get his little token.
Yeah, it was part 5, right? The Dream Child.
That wasn't even out in '89, was it?
I think it was actually out in '89. Yeah. So
I mean, I know it makes sense because it's a New Line film, but I mean, overall, it's just, I don't know, kind of weird.
I'm not really sure. You know. So in I think it's 5. I can't remember,
because I was gonna say after 5 is New Nightmare, right? Or is there another one in between? Because I was saying, because New Nightmare would be 93. I don't think there's that big of a gap in between all of them. I think there was a gap, but not.
It's Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare is the next one. Yeah. Honestly, I'm not really. I can't really remember. It's been a while since I've seen them, but it's probably bad. Actually, I don't want to admit this. So one of the two, and both of them have the same characters in it, and I know that part 4 has Bananarama's song in it, which I love. He's practicing karate to it. But in one of them, the main character, the final girl, is able to sort of take powers from every person.
Mm-hmm.
And
Dream Warriors, isn't it?
No, that's 3. That's 3. Patricia Arquette. But it's a similar scenario. But in this, she's able to take powers from each of her friends that are murdered, and then they sort of become like the ultimate fighter that can fight against Freddy. So I think the reference is just that you can fight against them because like you believe in yourself and you believe that they're nothing like in comparison. So I think that's ultimately what they were going for there. Now I can't remember if that's 4 or 5 because, like I said, they both have
same kind
the same characters and it's like a sequel to each other. So I can't remember which one it was, but I know that they in this one they're saying it's part 5, the Dream Child. So one thing that does stand out to me is that both It Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 really downplays the molestation stuff that happens to Bev. Because, in the first one, her father's obviously abusive.
I think I asked you if that happened in the book because they're definitely not overt about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely, like, from what he does, it seems like he is, but at the same time, it just seems like from the way they play, he could just be obsessive because his wife's dead and,
In the novel, like, he's, like, so concerned that Bev had sex that he wants to check her hymen to make sure that it's still intact. So, like, that's the level of, like, obsessive molestation sexuality that's going on in her life. And, in the films, it doesn't really come up that much. Like, you're right. It seems more like he's abusive, obviously, but he's not, there's not the whole sexual molestation issue. And then even so, like, her husband in this one has really, like, slight role. But in the film, I'm saying that, film, movie, they're the same thing. In the book, the actual, the abusiveness of Bev's life is sort of the precursor to what she becomes as a fighter for It Chapter 2. So I feel like those are really downplayed. I wanted to see those a little bit because I understand, we're working on a 1,000-page book, but you got 6 hours to do it, and the film spends a lot of time with each character, especially It Chapter 2, working through each character's artifact.
Which would have made this a much better miniseries.
I agree. I mean, I think that they needed to take each character and sort of give them an episode, give them a full.
That way you could have bounced like done like the book, bounced back and forth from childhood to adulthood,
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to mention too before we kind of wrap this up. Both It Chapter 1 and 2 would have been better off bouncing back and forth in flashback scenarios between adults and kids. It should not have been broken up between one movie as kids and one movie as adults. It just doesn't work that well because, as we see in It Chapter 2, one of the reasons why the film is so long is because it needs to revisit flashbacks that we've already seen in the first film.
And also stuff that we didn't see, but also stuff that's very ancillary. Like, again, when they were together and they were on their own after they had their big fight in the first film, and then we have these chase sequence scares, they're very redundant.
Yeah.
They're not tense, they're not scared, so it's moot. And you're right, I don't think, though, if they were to jump back and forth, again, you'd have to have a miniseries, because if you did that over 2 films, it wouldn't work. It'd be jarring. So, and I think this structure works better as a 2-part movie act, but at the same time, I think most of your interesting things are what happens during their childhood. So now in this film, you're just left over like, well, we're doing the same damn thing, but they're adults now. And haha, it's funny because Bill Hader's here saying fuck, fuck, fuck,
Yeah.
And that's to me the biggest problem with this, because again, at least if you had a miniseries, you could jump back and forth because it's a TV show. It makes more sense, to be able to do that narratively. You can, go at your own pace. You have a lot more time to flesh out your story that you want to tell. Here, again, this movie just, even though I don't think anyone has like a bad performance or anything, it's just nowhere near as interesting as the first film.
Yeah.
The spunkiness and all of that of the kids and what they have to overcome as children is a lot more interesting and exciting and a better story overall. it offers a lot more character development than what this film does. Because literally the only character who has, I mean, they all come to like, oh, you know, just kind of like adulthood, yay. But the only person who has any development in this film is Richie, really. Whereas in the other film, everybody has some form of development. And, you know, it's the Stand By Me, but with clowns.
Yeah, I agree. It is Stand By Me. It is very much Stand By Me in the way that it plays out, especially the first film. I mean, the first film itself was really Stand By Me in its elements. But in Chapter 2, I mean, it has a similar idea at play. I just wish that we didn't have to have so many redundant flashbacks that we already saw, or things that could have been expanded on in the first film and just, you know, touched on there instead of having to come back to it again and again and adding a lot of time to this runtime. At 3 hours almost, it's just a little bit unacceptable. So that's pretty much it. That's all I got for It Chapter 2. I think we kind of sound down on it, that we didn't love it. I think I feel bad because I feel like we pointed out a lot of flaws in it. And I actually don't dislike it that much. It's just that the flaws really are more prevalent than the good stuff in the film. I think it does some things right, but I think more so it's a really mediocre film, and expecting more from it in terms of scares and stuff like that, because of the first film.
Well, I don't think also the 2-year hype train did it any good.
That is true too.
Doesn't any good either. You know?
Yeah. There's a lot going into it. A lot of expectations, and that's always tough to navigate.
I think even as like a standalone film, if this was just about adults who run into this, then you took away like like a lot of the unnecessary flashbacks. I still don't think it's as good as the film as the first one.
Yeah, I think that's true. I don't think it's as good as the first one. I think the first one focused... I mean, obviously it did have some humor to it with the kids, but it focused less on the humor. And I think that's what you want in a horror film. You don't want to have to lean on humor as a crutch because you realize that your scares aren't really that good. And it feels like that's what It Chapter 2 is doing. So do you want to give this thing a rating? Should we? I gotta have a scale though. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm trying to think. What would be on a scale of 1 to 10 rice cookers that trap the deadlights, what would you give It Chapter 2?
I'll let you go first this time.
Okay, you want me to go first? Yes. All right. I would give it a 3. I think that... No, I'm sorry. A 3 out of 5. I would give it a 6 out of 10. I think that It Chapter 2 is
I was just about to say,
that's like really fucking... Yeah. Whoops.
So I don't even think you give Mako a 3.
No. 3 stars. A 6 out of 10. That's what I meant. I think that It Chapter 2 is an okay movie. I think it's mediocre. I think that it does what it does okay, but the CGI isn't great and it relies on it like constantly. Its scares are really just not there, and the tension should be a little bit heavier than what they give us. And it's broken a lot by comedy. That's really unnecessary. While I love Bill Hader, I love what he does. I think he does a good job as Richie. This was not the film to have that in. I don't think that we needed the amount of comedy that we get from Richie. So while he does a great job, it's sort of at odds with the rest of the film. And that kind of comes into play multiple times. And like we talked about with the leper vomiting on Eddie, that whole scenario is really just off tone from the rest of the film. I don't think it works. So we have these really weird sequences that don't really work in a film. And, you've got 3 hours to kill. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on in It Chapter 2. So I guess a couple of scenes that don't really work doesn't seem like that much. But when it constantly pulls away from the tension and suspense that should be generated from a character like Pennywise and the tone of the film, I just think that that's a really major flaw that is it's at odds with even the first film in the series. So I think if you watch these two films back to back, It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2, they would feel very it would be like a seesaw. You'd be up and down. I think It Chapter 2 is a little bit more suspenseful. Or, I'm sorry, It Chapter 1 is a little bit more suspenseful. It Chapter 2 is a little bit more comedic. And I just don't know that it works in the scope of watching these as a double feature.
All right, so the whole reason I had you go first was because I thought you were going to give it a much more positive rating than me. But you fucking do the same thing I'm going to do. Give it a 6. I agree with all your points. Again, I think the biggest flaw with this film is that it's just way too long, and there's a lot of redundancies in the plot. And basically, it's a retread of the first film. The main fact that even though like all the actors in here are very, do a fine job, nobody really has any growth, that makes them outside of Bill Hader, and that's mainly only probably because I really, we both are big Bill Hader fans. He's the one that really stands out as, stealing the show and being entertaining and having, like, a personality. Because even, like, Bill, even though, like, as he goes back, we mentioned it, the more and more he stays in Derry, he gets his, his stutter back. None of the characters really have, like, their childhood personalities outside of Richie and Eddie. I just think it's a big missed opportunity. The fact that it doesn't keep the same tense horror style, almost at times Conjuring-esque like horror from the first film. I don't think that the fact that it's a retread helps at all. Again, because by the time you get to the last act, it's literally beat by beat the same exact thing that happened in the first one. It's just not near. I don't think by splitting up the two films it did it any favors. Because again, I think the interesting part is the childhood aspects. That to me is the strongest, part.
Mm-hmm.
Where and I do think it's a lot because again, kids with their how they react to tension and horror is a lot more different than how adults act. Because a lot of the times the characters in this film don't even feel like they're scared. They're just like, oh shit, fuck, here we go again. Oh shit, fuck, I'm nervous. Where the kids are bringing out the real, like, oh fuck, this this is scary. So basically what we said before is how I feel. It's kind of hard right now to put it into words, but I think the biggest thing I can say is just missed opportunity. Yeah, and a mini series would have done this a world of better.
Well, you know what? In 10 years, maybe we'll get one.
Probably
redo it again. Yeah, I think a lot was made of the its for this generation, and I think they did some things well. And
again, Bill Scarsdale is great as Pennywise. A lot of the way the film looks. Outside of some of the CGI in this film, but like the way it's shot, it's all very good. That soundtrack's atmospheric. Again, I just don't think for how long it is, this film matches the quality of the first.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think a lot of people now look down on the miniseries from the 90s, but it did some things right. And it did some things wrong. And I think that the same is true of it in its sequel, It Chapter 2. I think It Chapter 1 was really good. I think It Chapter 2 kind of let people down. So you're going to get the same sort of off-kilter feeling that you got from the It miniseries. And I don't know that It as a novel can really ever be adapted to film well. For one thing, it's like 1,100 pages. You just have a lot of material to work with. I don't know that you can do it. it's just so hard to put all of that into, one film. TV, maybe, maybe you can do it in TV. But again, a lot of what it works on as a novel is the fear that you have as a reader. So your reading of the scary stuff that Stephen King puts in is not really going to be reflected in CGI. It's what you make of it in your imagination that's really what works for this book.
Well, again, I think that's too why I said like a lot of the stuff that happens in the background is, like the tensest stuff. Because it's out of focus, you can't see it, so there's more left to your imagination. And that's something I think we both said on the podcast several times when we talk about horror films. Less is more,
Yeah. You've got to use some of your imagination in order to really get the scares.
Because what I think is scary is going to be different than what you think is scary.
Right.
Yep. A CGI spider head walking around, not scary.
Huh. All right, so thank you for listening to our It Chapter 2 review, I guess, if you want to call it that. Just mostly a discussion. We are going to be back next week with our special Halloween series that we haven't really announced. We've said that they're going to be it's going to be horror anthologies, but we haven't said exactly what we're covering. I'm going to try to put something together, like a fun video or something, that kind of compiles everything together that we're going to do. I don't know.
What are we doing next week then?
You want me to announce what we're doing next week?
Yeah. It'd be good so they know what they're getting into.
Well, I did say we're doing horror anthologies, and we're starting from the 60s, and we're doing decades. So we are going to start with Black Friday. Yeah. Now I got to look at it because I can't remember what I said.
Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath. That's right.
Jesus Christ.
I forgot. 1963's Black Sabbath, directed by Mario Bava.
You didn't tell me it was Italian.
It is.
Damn it.
So actually,
I should have known it. It's not like Americans and British were putting out horror anthologies in the 60s.
The fun thing is, Boris Karloff actually hosts it. So
ooh,
we're gonna have some fun with this one. And we decided that we're gonna do decades. So, and we're gonna revisit a couple of decades as we go through, just because there were a couple of films that we really wanted to do. But we're starting with the 60s, and we're gonna work our way forward. So we're starting with 1963's Black Sabbath. Should be fun times.
Yeah.
A little different than the rest of the Halloween series that we do. We've done the Saw series. We did Halloween series.
Was Remake-A-Ween last year?
Remake-A-Ween, yep.
Or was that no, because 90 Slasher Month was like in May or April.
Yeah. So we have a lot of fun. We're going to do horror anthologies, and I think it'll be a good time. It was a good idea that you had.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, check it out next week. We'll be back with Black Sabbath. We start our Halloween series. Thanks for listening. We are on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, I guess they call it now, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, any podcasting app that you can think of. We're on it. So
Podbean.
Yeah. Subscribe. Leave us a nice review. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Blood and Black Rum Podcast. We're also on Twitter at Blood and Black Rum. And we have an email address at bloodandblackrumpodcast@gmail.com. Write to us. Let us know what you think about the show. Give us suggestions for upcoming movies that we can cover. And we have a Patreon at patreon.com/bloodandblackrumpodcast. If you would like to, you can donate to us. Any donation helps fund the show, so we appreciate anything that you can give. And we hope to see you next time for our Halloween episodes.
Take care.